All right, so welcome everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Liu. I'm the chair of the English department here at Eastern, and I'm welcoming you all to English Night. Generally, at our fall semester English night, we also have our Sigma Tau Delta induction ceremony, but Sigma Tau Delta this semester decided to do that in a separate Zoom. They just finished that a few minutes ago, and I send out my congratulations to all the new inductees, if any of them are here with us now. And the other thing that we always do at our fall is some awards and scholarship announcements, and then our capstone presentations. And so those latter two things are what we have on tap for tonight. And so first of all, I realize now that this PowerPoint approach was not the best for Zoom, because a lot of the information is over on the side where the videos will be, but oh well, I'll learn better next time. First of all is the CONNIE CAMPO Scholarship, which is awarded every year to a student in the English department. This scholarship, as it says there, was established in memory of Constance Campo, who was a longtime member of the English department staff. This scholarship is for a non-traditional student who's demonstrated excellence in his or her studies and has shown sensitivity to gender and diversity issues, as did Ms. Campo. We're happy to award this scholarship to 2 recipients this year. Sometimes we're able to do that, and we're happy to be able to do it this year. The first recipient is Allison Green. Allison's a conscientious, bright, and engaged student. In my classical rhetoric class last year, she wrote an excellent neo-Aristotelian analysis of 19-year-old poet Nina Maria Donovan's poem, Nasty Woman. And she argued effectively for Donovan's place as a feminist rhetor of note. And at the same time that she was evaluating Donovan's poem against the ancient Athenian and Roman standards for invention, style, and delivery, Allison sought to exemplify those standards in her own writing, employing metaphor, anaphora, and other devices in engaging ways. This is the kind of work that the CAMPO Scholarship seeks to support. And so congratulations to Allison Green. I don't know if Allie's here or not, but I hope she appreciates all our good wishes for her. And the second recipient this year is Nicole Marcus. Nicole was nominated by both Dr. Pauly and by Dr. McDonald, and both of those faculty noted her abilities and commitment as a critical thinker and writer. And Dr. McDonald highlighted work Nicole completed in her feminist theories class, noting that Nicole consistently prioritizes issues of nationality, colonialism, capitalism, and access. She considers these issues in particular systems, including the prison industrial complex, and in terms of US policy. Her transcript reveals a persistent commitment to issues of diversity and gender issues and academic excellence in considering those issues. Again, that's the kind of work this scholarship is meant to recognize. So our congratulations go out to Nicole Marcus too. Congratulations to both of those scholarship winners. Next, I'd like to announce the winner of the Alexander Sandy Taylor Memorial Scholarship. This is a scholarship that was launched by family, colleagues, and friends of Sandy Taylor, who was a scholar, Eastern professor, and publisher. It was established following his death in 2007 and endowed in 2015. It's meant for an English major with preference given to students who demonstrate a commitment to peace and to the rights of mankind, and to those who show an interest in poetry. This year, nominated by both Dr. Donaghy and Dr. Taracchio, our winner is Joyce Figueroa. She's an honors scholar and a committed student of poetry and creative writing. And Dr. Donaghy stated in his nomination that Joyce crafted a portfolio of excellent poems for his course, writing bravely and insightfully about issues central to her, including her family, her culture, social justice, and the dignity of work. She is completing her honors thesis with Dr. Taracchio. It's a novel in stories for which she has done extensive research. that explores the lives of a series of transgender characters. Both faculty believe that Joyce's work beautifully represents the ideals of Sandy Taylor. So our congratulations now go to Joyce. Next, I'll announce the winner of the David and Janet Phillips Scholarship. The David and Janet Phillips Scholarship was established in 1990 by Donald Phillips in honor of his parents, David and Janet, their commitment to community service, their longstanding association with Eastern. The scholarship is awarded to an excellent student who's either an English major or a theater major, with preference for a student who's majoring in both or heavily involved in both areas. Nominated by faculty in the theater department this year, Caitlin CELIA is a highly motivated and accomplished student who is the recipient of this scholarship for this year. She has broad-based interests in performance, literary studies, and history. She's both an English major and a theater major. Complementing her solid research and writing abilities is a keen determination to apply these skills in creative contexts. In spring of 2020, Caitlin served as dramaturge for the Eastern production of the play, The Brothers' Sighs. She connected the critical writing skills obtained through her education as an English major and the analytical techniques nourished by examining theatrical performances as a theater major in doing this work as dramaturge. Most significantly, Caitlin exemplifies the David and Janet Phillips Endowed Scholarship as she aspires to develop a thriving career in performance, dramaturgy, and theater criticism. Congratulations to Caitlin. And lastly, a new award that we are happy to be giving this year, the CELIA CATLETT Prize. It was established in July of 2019 to recognize the best capstone project by a senior English major completed within the prior academic year. Dr. Celia Catlett was a member of Eastern's English department from 1972 until her retirement in 2001. And for 10 of those years, she was writing director for the university. The Celia Catlett Prize was established and funded in her honor by her daughter, Catherine Anderson. This is the first year we are awarding this prize, and the inaugural winner is Vanya Galicia. Vanya's winning project, Growing Up Undocumented, was nominated by Dr. Malenchik, who taught the Capstone seminar, Rhetorics of Crime, for which Vanya completed this web-based project that combines text, videos, and photos to persuade her audience that the US is currently committing the crime of genocide against undocumented individuals. Her work depicts the horrors committed against undocumented people as a group, but also her own experiences as an undocumented person, her separation from her family, her grief at her family's fate, her mental health struggles, her growing political awareness. These elements combine to produce a powerful statement. It was a difficult job judging the various nominees for this prize, but in the end, the judges all agreed that Vanya's project was well worth it. And so congratulations to Vanya. I know she couldn't be here tonight. And congratulations to all our winners. All right, so now I will turn it over to Dr. Taracchio, and he will introduce his capstone seminar and the students who will be presenting from that seminar.
All right, thank you, Dr. Liu. And thanks everybody for turning up. And usually, we have hors d'oeuvres and everything at this thing. So I'm glad that so many of you are here to, to see what we've been up to. So writing a novel is challenging enough under the most perfect of circumstances. The circumstances were not perfect for this small but feisty group of writers in this senior seminar, all of whom wrote a novel. When one begins a novel, the questions and the self-doubt almost immediately start to drift in. Will I ever be able to finish this? Do I have what it takes to see this through? And if I do, will it matter to anyone? Is it a pile of crap? Yep, this definitely is a pile of crap, isn't it? Does any of it even make sense? Oh my God, I've made a huge mistake. Do I have enough communications credits to switch majors? Those questions never go away. Not until the ending, amazingly, it always seems, arrives. But until then, the uncertainty can be soul crushing. That's why there are so many half-finished novels out there in the world. Most writers feel that self-doubt creeping in and they just give up. The idea that all it takes to write one is a load of talent or a great idea is pure fallacy. Talent is a part of the equation, sure, but mostly it takes endless hours of old-fashioned hard work. And faith that if you keep working, keep pushing through, everything will come together. It can be a lonely, solitary existence under the best of conditions. But these past 9 months, like everything else in the world, it seems, have been, well, crazy. The seminar's process has been logistically complicated. Once COVID hit, none of us really knew how it was all going to work out. Quite frankly, I was a little nervous from day one. Usually when I teach this seminar, at least several of the students have been in my fiction writing workshops in the past semesters. This time, zero, none. So fine, whatever, I thought. We'll just take things a little slower. So we read 8 short novels during the early part of the spring term, striving, as always, to read like writers, taking the novels apart to figure out how they've been put together, generating ideas and approaches for our own stories. Then, when we were about to start hammering out potential storylines and synopses and outlines and approaches and premises to start, writing, spring break came around and all our plans had to be thrown out the window. The whole tenet of this seminar had been to eliminate some of the novelist's isolation, to lean on the idea that we're all in this together, to bounce ideas off of each other, to help each other through the rough patches. That became infinitely more complicated when we were forced to undertake this endeavor over Zoom. Taken together with the fact that none of these young novelists had ever taken a fiction writing workshop, once again, I must admit, my thought was, uh-oh. But in the end, I must say, I'm prouder of this group of writers than I've ever, prouder of this group than any writers that I've ever taught. They stepped up. They laughed off the absurdity and soldiered on. The novel writing process can be draining, mentally, physically, emotionally, socially, even when not socially distant. That self-doubt I mentioned before becomes a constant part of the novelist's life and shows up in the most unlikely places. And I know they experience some of that doubt, as we all do, but they push through it. Saul Bellow famously said, "A writer is nothing more than a reader who has been moved to emulation." Most novelists write novels because they've read novels and have been moved by them, and somewhere inside is the desire to move others in the same way. Despite the challenges and COVID-related barriers to each other, the desire was there for these students, and during this entire semester, they were cranking out a minimum of 10 pages a week. But of course, a novel is more than a stack of pages with words on them. It's characters who come to life on those pages, and conflicts that lead to actions and choices that ultimately change them. In many ways, and this was probably inevitable given the circumstances, the course turned out to be a battle of wills, a search for faith in ourselves, a search that I think we all felt committed to. And despite my own initial fears, I'm really, really proud of the work everyone turned out. Not just the quality of the writing and the seriousness of its intent, but in the variety of styles and voices and the innovative approaches to structure and plot and subject matter. You'll get a taste of a couple of these diverse approaches in a moment, but I want to mention some of the others as well, as one of the true unexpected pleasures of the past few months, for all of us, I think, was the opportunity to keep up with the progress of our fellow writers. The act of sharing drafts and bouncing ideas off of one another were acts of discovery. I even discovered how to use the breakout room function on Zoom, which, let's be honest, might have been the most unexpected accomplishment of all. As was discussing the challenges we'd stumbled upon in each new week's worth of writing and talking out possible solutions. This process helped to create a much needed support network we'd hoped for from the beginning. So through this process, we all were able to follow the development of Wolfgang and Peter, the characters in Tegan Rushmeyer's World War II era novel Disowned. We marveled at the stark rendering of Rachel Videra's futuristic novel Emergency. We discovered Titania's magical world of fairies and halflings and Julia McKinnon's The Shadows Within Water. And Kaylee Blackwood's beautifully tragic family novel, Once We Meet, stunningly rendered in pitch-perfect second person. All of the novels represented here mix real-world experience with vivid imagination to create human beings living life on the page. And so now, to give you a sense of the lives these writers have created, I'd like to start things off with a little serial killing. So here's our first presenter, Jenna Petiti, author of The Burning Man. Jenna, you here?
I am here.
All right.
Hi. So, like Dr. Tracchia said, my novel is about a serial killer, an untraditional sort of serial killer. The name of my book is The Burning Man, and it is sectioned off into different points of view between Theodore Lee Fisher, who is the main character and killer, and Sandra McKinley. So Teddy and Sandy, and Sandra McKinley is his love interest. Both of them have troubled and abusive pasts, and they kind of delve into that inside their own individual sections. And from these traumas of their childhood, Teddy is left with an entity that like forms in his head that doesn't really exist to anybody else, but he can see and hear this person. And Sandy is left with severe paternal issues, desperate for love and willing to do anything to feel accepted. So the Burning Man is an entity that he can only see or hear. It is human-like, and it's like a human-like figure, like a burn victim. He has severe burns covering his entire body. His head is on fire. He has boils and blisters, charred skin, the whole, 9 yards. And he tells Teddy to kill people. So he follows him around, visits him in his nightmares, and tortures Teddy until he finally hits the brink of, I can't take this anymore. And each murder is different. So there is no pattern, no motivation, direction, like anything like that. So it's very hard for the police to track him. So I will be reading the chapter. I think it's the 5th murder that he's committed. And yeah, we'll just begin with that. So this is in 1987. Teddy at this time is 27 years old and Sandy is 22 years old. The temperature is unforgiving, especially at this time in the morning. Stars are still hanging lazily in the sky against the lavender backdrop, but no moon is accompanying them. No clouds, no birds, no planes, nothing. Even with thermal socks and gloves, a thick wool hat, and a puffer coat zipped up to my chin, I can't keep my teeth from chattering. It's a short walk from my apartment, a couple blocks north on Main and a right at Athens Boulevard. It's on the left side of the road, in between a Dairy Queen and a mom-and-pop drugstore, a brick building with its green neon sign illuminating the words, Dell's Grocery. Typically, I dread the sight of this place, but this morning it was refreshing, comforting even. Between the frosty morning weather and nightmare still fresh on my mind, the Thanksgiving Day rush will be the perfect distraction. I remember I was in the hallway of my apartment building, right outside my door, and I can hear Sandy screaming from the other side. I wasn't thinking, I just knew I had to get to her. I opened the door and was hit with a thick film of smoke permeating the entire apartment. Everything was hazy and I followed her screams into the kitchen. She was standing against the wall, saying the oven door was stuck and wouldn't open. Whatever was inside was on fire. I ran over to the oven and pulled, but no give. I pulled again, kicked it, and tried once more. Finally, I felt lax. One last pull, and the door burst open with black clouds spilling into the kitchen. I yelled for Sandy to open the windows, but there was no response. I turned around and she was gone. In her place was the Burning Man. I could see him clearly despite the room being filled with smoke. His face was covered in popped blisters, the fluid dripping down. It leaked all over his blackened, shriveled skin where the red of flesh poked through the cracks. His arms and legs looked the same, but there were pieces of his charred skin peeling off from his limbs, hanging there, dead by the last few living cells. I collapsed, completely paralyzed. He wrapped his hands around my torso, picked up my limp body with ease, and shoved my head into the oven, feeling my cheek grind against the iron burners inside, still turned on. I can't remember how it felt. I just know that I woke up, screaming and soaked in sweat, Sandy by my side, half asleep, rubbing my leg to comfort. I hurried to the back of the building where the employee entrance is. The door is propped open with a dented can of carrots, and 2 high schoolers stand by, getting in one last smoke before the store opens. I punch in my time card, 4:51 a.m. In just 9 minutes, we will unlock the doors, and soon the aisles will be filled with frantic shoppers searching for a last-minute turkey, a box of stuffing, or a bag of green beans. I will tell them we're sold out. The last shipment of turkeys arrived yesterday, and we were cleaned out 2 hours after they hit the refrigerated shelves. Husbands will yell at me in frustration, not wanting to go home empty-handed to their wives, who will throw tantrums in the kitchen, launching whisks at walls and cursing at the ticking clock. I will stand there and take it like every other minimum wage worker, wanting to blow their brains out for putting up with this just to make a lousy $3.35 an hour. I pour myself a cup of coffee from the pot in the break room and carry it to my register. It tastes burnt and bitter, but I need the caffeine. People are already waiting outside the front doors, chatting and looking over the contents on their shopping lists. Ghostly Christmas music crackles over the store speakers, and the manager walks over to unlock the front doors. It must be opening time. The line of people scurries in, beginning their search for items to check off their lists. Hands grab at the boxes of stuffing and cans of pumpkin sitting on the shelves. Broccoli and corn, green beans and carrots are stuffed into plastic produce bags. Bottles of sparkling cider clink against one another as they are picked up by their necks. My first customer comes up to the register with a carton of eggs, a gallon of milk, and a box of cornbread. She doesn't make eye contact and presents a raspy, glottal-sounding after my rehearsed, "Good morning, how are you?" I scan her items and place them on the other side of the counter. She hands me a $10 bill, and I get her change, saying, "Have a nice day," before turning my attention over to the next customer. She makes another gargled sound, as if to get my attention. I pretend not to hear, and watch from the corner of my eye she tries to balance the items in her hands, which is very entertaining to watch. The flow of patrons continue, and I find myself lost in the routine of scanning and small talk. I tell the next lady to have a nice day and turn to the next customer, immediately beginning again with a, "Hello, how are you today?" At this moment, the man also begins to speak, and we cut each other off. The man rolls his eyes and makes a sour face, as if this is the rudest thing that has ever happened to him. "I'll just try this again," he says curtly. "I need a turkey." He is middle-aged, maybe mid to late 40s. He's starting to bald, the top of his head shiny and bare with a ring of curly brown hair circling around the sides. He's a short thing, maybe 5'5", 5'6" on a good day. Below his crooked nose is a mustache that's slightly overgrown past his upper lip, and his large glasses take up most of his small face. I feel slightly bad for him, looking so homely and all. I sigh. He isn't going to like my answer. "Unfortunately, sir, we ran out of turkeys yesterday, since today is Thanksgiving. Although I'm sure there are, no shit, it's Thanksgiving. That's why I need a turkey." When he says the word Thanksgiving, I feel little bullets of spit hit my face. Jesus Christ, sir, that isn't possible. There are no more left in the store. I feel myself losing the last bit of patience I have. We'll figure it out. I'm not going home to my bitchin' wife without a goddamn dead bird. He yells this, and his face turns red, little veins popping up along his temple. He has a lingering scent of whiskey on his breath. "Then walk into the woods with your pudgy sausage legs, find one, kill it, and bring it home to your bitching wife. I can't help you." I don't mean to say this aloud, but I do. And the man's face turns even angrier, sprouting more veins. He flips me the finger and stomps off. About 30 minutes later, I am relieved at the register for my break. Sandy is already waiting for me behind the store, a lit cigarette between her lips, a paper bag crunched in one hand. "Hey, baby." She pricks up from leaning against the wall and walks towards me, greeting me with a kiss, leaving a red stain on my stubbled chin. She hands the paper bag. "There's a sandwich, chips, and a cola in there." I thank her and pull out the sandwich while Sandy takes another drag of her cig. "How are you feeling?" she asks, referring to the nightmare. Fine, I guess. Happens so often I'm starting to get used to it." I tell her, "This is a lie. There is no possible way of getting used to this mind torture, but I don't want her to worry about me more than she already is." I start to take another bite of my sandwich when I feel something solid smash the side of my head. Sandy gasps and jumps back. "What in the hell?" is all I could stammer, seeing a glass bottle shatter to the pavement. "What is wrong with you?" Sandy screams, and I turn towards her gaze. Standing about 20 feet away is that homely man from the store, still without a turkey. "You piece of shit," the man slurs, sounding more like, "You piece of shit." He wags his finger in the air while saying this, stumbling about, unable to find his balance. He starts to close the space between us, each step on the verge of toppling over. "Get out of here," I tell him, waving my hand dismissively. I have at least a foot on him. He didn't actually believe he could take me on, did he? Let me kiss your woman, he sneers, reaching his arms out, making kissy faces towards Sandy. I said get out of here. I can feel the anger bubbling in my stomach. The burning man appears, standing behind him. Do it, the voice says. The man stumbles closer and I stand up and shove him. Not too hard, but he falls over anyways. The veins pop out again in his head, and he gets up and tries to charge at me. I step aside right before he makes contact, and he plows into the wall. His nose gets smashed and begins to bleed out. I'm gonna fuck your bitch, he snarls, a smirk emerging, showing his blood-lined teeth. It is in this moment that I feel something snap inside of me. I could see the burning man out of the corner of my eye, standing so close to me now, whispering over and over, do it. I tackle him to the ground, sitting on top of him as he starts to cough and gag. My hands wrap around his neck, and he says one last thing to me. You don't have the balls, pussy. I clench my teeth and squeeze, the man's eyes bulging and wild. He attempts to grab at my arms to pull me off, but he can't. I can feel the cartilage in his neck, and all I want to do is shatter it. I pick up his head, my hand still squeezing around his neck, and force it back down, his skull cracking against the pavement. I loosen my grip, breathing heavily, a loud ringing piercing in my ears. The man just lies there, unmoving, with empty eyes still open. I put my ear close to his mouth, no air. I press my thumb to his wrist, no pulse. He's dead. Thank you.
So Dr. Lee, should we just go on to the next one, or do we want to do questions? What's the thinking here?
Well, we usually do questions. We can either do questions after each of you have another presenter, right?
One more, yeah.
So we could do questions after each presenter, or we could do after both.
Okay. Why don't we want to just do it after both?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. So, all right. So, thanks, Jenna. Great job. Our next presenter is Maggie Appleton. She's the author of Festival Dreams, she's gonna take us on a freaky little trip to Woodstock in 1969 from the perspective of a middle-aged woman trying to negotiate the challenges of life in 2020. So, Maggie, you're on.
Thank you. Her name is Celine, and she's an older woman, and she's like sort of on a journey of self-discovery in this year of COVID. And part of her process of doing that is to look back on all the festivals that she has gone to in her life and the magic and the love that she discovered, not only from the festivals, but within herself. So as Professor Taracchio said, this is August of 1969, and she's off to the Woodstock Festival after she had gone to her first festival, which was the Newport Folk Festival. And although most of you are all too young to remember, that was also the summer of the first moonwalk. And she happened to see that at the Newport Folk Festival because someone had brought a television and had it up on top of their van, and it really mattered to her. And I think that that led her into wanting to go to more festivals. So this one, as I said, is Woodstock. And she has gone with a bunch of friends from her church group. And I'll just plunge right in then. Woodstock. By the time we got to Woodstock, we were 500,000 strong, and everywhere there was song and celebration. And that was by Joni Mitchell. The trip to Bethel, New York was only a few hours drive and only slowed down as they got closer to their destination. Slower but steady, much like trying to get over one of the bridges to get into Cape Cod on any summer weekend day. They sang on the way there, mostly show tunes. Jeff brought his guitar, and so they sang some folk songs when the trip started lagging. They had planned to arrive around noon, but it was already mid-afternoon when they stopped in the town of Bethel and picked up some drinks and snacks and made phone calls home to anxious parents, letting them know that they had arrived safely and weren't lying in a ditch on the side of the road. Universally, parents always worried that their kids would end up in a ditch on the side of the road. After they left the town, they just followed the flow of traffic until they ended up following the car that was in front of them down a little embankment to park in a field. People were already setting up campsites, so they decided that this would be their new home for a few days and set up the tent that Linda had brought. And Peter sacrificed one of his tapestries that they rigged up between the bus and the tent so that they would have some shade. Where they ended up was close to a small stand of trees, but not in it, so they would only get shade from them for a little while each day. It was late afternoon when they finally headed out to the concert area. They just followed a bunch of people on a path through the trees. All along the walk, they could hear that the music had started. For Celine, the whole experience had a dreamlike quality to it, as they followed these strangers and didn't really know where they were going. And then suddenly, coming up to a small rise and then reaching the top, looked down at one of the most amazing sights that she had ever seen. The field sloped away into what seemed like a huge concave bowl, and it was filled with what she thought were thousands of people. She had never seen so many humans all together before. The Newport Festival may have had hundreds, but never this. Celine stopped and stood gaping in wonder and enchantment at the vision of the colorful array before her. Unfortunately, that was when she became separated from her friends. They had not noticed that she had stopped, and they had kept moving with the others heading down the hill towards the concert. She hadn't noticed they were gone for a minute, and then it took her another to care. When she became fully cognizant of that fact, she thought she might panic. But then on second thought, she was pretty sure she knew how to get back to the bus, and so she headed down to the concert on her own, knowing that she probably wouldn't find them. It was going to be a beautiful evening. Richie Havens was playing, and people were laughing and hugging all around her. She stopped to watch a guy who was playing guitar along with Richie Havens, while a young woman who was dressed in flowing skirt and fringed halter danced around him, skirt twirling. Her heart sang. She felt the surge of joyous energy and was drawn into it and made a part of it. She wandered along, weaving in and around the people who had settled on blankets to listen to the music. A small group of people invited her to share their blanket and blow bubbles with them. The scent of incense and pot smoke pervaded and added to the sensory experience. Sitting there with this group of wonderful people who were fun and kind, and although she had just met them, made her feel safe and happy. In fact, she felt so comfortable with them that she decided to try smoking pot for the first time when they passed a joint to her. Not that it mattered, because just being there between all the pot smoke in the air and the loving energy, she got a contact high, and that made her feel a sense of connectedness. And it was a very familiar and very comfortable place to be. At 17, Celine was still an innocent. She was a virgin in every respect. Her list of have-not-dones far outnumbered her list of have-dones. And now she relaxed into this magical world of laughter, love, and music, because for some reason, this world made sense to her. Eventually, even though it had begun to drizzle, she wandered down the hill and wormed her way through the crowd, occasionally stopping to share a toke or a swig from a communal wine bottle. Everyone she met she considered a friend. And then there was the music that no matter where she was or what she was doing, filled her ears and heart. Sometime late that night, or more precisely early the next morning, with Joan Baez still singing, she found her way back to the campsite. She was damp and cold, and though still wrapped in a love bubble, she knew she needed to warm up. Ginger and Linda had made it back too and were sitting inside the bus, wrapped up in their bags and sharing a joint. A little later, Peter joined them, having gone his own way for a while. Ginger was a little annoyed that he had left them, but it ended up not being a big deal. Meanwhile, Celine had put on a dry shirt and was snugly wrapped in her sleeping bag. No one knew where Jeff was, and none of them were worried about it. They sat around and got high, drank some wine, and after sharing some of their memories of the day, they drifted off to sleep, and the music continued to play in their head. Music, whether on stage or throughout the camping areas, was a constant. It was the backdrop of the weekend. Jeff, like Celine, had gotten separated from the group early and also had found people to hang out with and get high with. One of them had offered to share a hit of acid, and he took it because he thought he would never find a better place to trip for the first time. But things got real weird real fast, and he became lost in the crowd. Remembering being lost in a large department store when he was a little boy, a repressed childhood trauma that filled him with fear, he became that little boy again and was frantically trying to find his mommy. He had wandered up to random people asking them if they had seen his mommy and looked so lost and afraid that a bunch of people tried to help him. But it wasn't until an angel appeared before him and smiling beckoned him to take her hand. When he did, she swept him away from the crowd and then left him with a guy called Hugh in the hog farm freakout tent, who took care of him, gave him water, and talked him down, explaining that he was having a bad trip and that everything was going to be all right. He was, although he stayed in the tent for a while, even after he came down. His jaw and back ached, but he felt safe there. He tried to help out in the tent by making sure others who were in the same state that he had been were hydrated and fed by the hog farm folks. Eventually, in the early hours of Monday morning, he quietly found his way to the campsite, and after telling the others what happened to him, crawled into the bus, promptly passed out, and stayed there. It wasn't until they watched the movie about Woodstock that Celine and Jeff realized that Hugh was wavy gravy. While Celine felt sorry that Jeff had had a bad trip, she was glad that he had found folks that had helped him through it. She hadn't gone to the hog farm food line, or she probably would have seen him. They had brought snack food with them, and at some point on Saturday, a pickup truck drove by and threw peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to them. Saturday was a great day, even though the drizzle continued. Celine and Linda mostly hung out at the campsite that day. Occasionally, some people would stop by and chill with them, playing music and singing together, drinking and smoking, all new to Celine and Linda, but they both embraced it all being their new reality. Most of the time they stayed in the bus, and because it was dry, most of the time they stayed in the bus because it was dry. The tapestry was good for shade, but it didn't keep out the rain. Peter and Ginger stuck together for the rest of the festival. They caught some of the early Saturday performances and then headed back to the campsite in the afternoon. They had caught Santana and were raving about what a great performance they'd given and how much they loved them. After a while, Celine and Linda became aware that Peter and Ginger were making out and it was getting hot and heavy. Figuring their friends needed some alone time, and since the rain had stopped, they left and headed out to the concert area. The walk was about 2 miles, but Celine was accustomed to walking everywhere. Since she didn't have a car or a license, she either walked or biked because she was too timid at that time to hitchhike. It took a while to get to the concert site, but they caught a few of the performances that evening and into Sunday morning. The only one she paid any real attention to was Janis Joplin. Both of them really liked Janis, having caught a performance at a local college the previous summer. A little drunk and very stoned, Celine and Linda giggled their way back to the camp. Sometime in the middle of the day, the wind kicked up and they packed all of their stuff and themselves in the bus and set out the storm that rolled through. Late Sunday afternoon, they all headed for the last time to the concert, except for Jeff, who was still crashing in the bus. It was rough going because the rain had left the walkways muddy. Celine was happy that she caught the last couple of songs by Joe Cocker, and even though she was only half listening, she got caught up in the excitement of Country Joe and the Fish. They had found a space that was closer to the stage than she had managed to get to before. She was feeling exhausted, and even with all the mud, she gratefully accepted part of a blanket town and ended up crashing for a few hours. Peter headed back to the bus to nap before the drive home, but Ginger and Linda stayed with her. She woke up just in time for Crosby, Stills, and Nash. She had never heard them before, and she became an instant fan, thrilled by the beautiful harmonies. It seemed a fitting end to her festival experience. It was in the early hours of the morning when the three girls headed back to the bus. Peter had to get home to go to work on Monday afternoon, so they left soon after. The trip home was much quieter than the trip there. Celine's head was still wrapping around all that had happened to her. She was tired and happy and dirty, and it was so wonderful that she wanted to keep the magic alive in her. She felt all the mixed feelings of being homesick for the music, people, joy, and love that had filled her life for a little, yet at the same time wanting hot food and a shower and the comfort of her own bed. In the days, weeks, months, and even years following the festival, when people asked her about it, she really couldn't articulate how it was, what it meant to her. She did not see many of the performances, although the music was always there and part of her subconscious. She did recall seeing some performances, although most from such a distance that it was more like being swept up in the excitement of the crowd than anything. Memories faded, and after watching the movie and all the subsequent films about Woodstock, there was a blending of her actual memories and the memories of the films and of the stories told by other friends. Sometimes she thought she may have dreamed being there. Yet there lingered in her mind that niggling feeling of a mostly forgotten memory, and again that feeling of strange nostalgia that haunted her waking and sleeping hours. This was her memory of Woodstock. Was this her memory of Woodstock? Or did it become combined into some weird amalgam of her festival dreams and other actual festivals? And that's it. Thank you.
Well, I think our presenters are willing to field questions if anybody has any. No?
Ah, there's one.
No? Oh, hi.
Yes?
Professor Otero.
Hey, oh, hi.
Yeah, hi.
I don't know if, I'm not, okay, I'll go.
Yeah.
I had a question for Jenna. So Jenna, I've only been here for 3 semesters, and Jenna has taken every one of my linguistics classes every semester. So I feel very close to her, and I didn't know how, I'd never seen this side of her. So it was very intense. It was beautiful. It was great. It's really surprising. Thank you. I guess my question is a little bit linguistic, that you've inspired me to think about something. You use the historical present. I don't know if you guys discussed this in class, or the sometimes called the narrative present tense. So when you're talking about past events, you're using the present tense. Mm-hmm. And you might or might not know the answer to this question, but did you do it on purpose? And if so, why? And if you don't know, if it came naturally, then that's totally fine.
It's okay. So using like the present voice that I did.
Yeah, so it was, the character was talking about what they had done in the past, but you were using the present tense.
So kind of I had a really tough time, even like Tarakio, when he was reading my draft, like I flip-flop between past tense and present tense a lot. And he was like, you need to go back and like, you know, pin through all of this. And so that took like 3 hours because I'm really bad at like distinguishing. But I think I wanted it to feel like I wanted to feel inside his shoes and like how he was feeling and like get the, or like I tried to take on Teddy in a sense. And I feel like by doing it in the present tense as it's happening kind of helps make the moment seem real, I guess, rather than just a memory. Besides when he was reflecting back on the nightmare that he had the night before. But yeah, just something to kind of keep spicy.
It did for me. It put me right there. And I didn't want to be there, but I had to. But that's part of the story, right? With that, it was very effective and very powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
It puts you right in that creepy head of his.
in that scene, right? In the present tense. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
I think Dr. Kiriko's hand is up.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Liu. I have a question for both writers. I really enjoyed both readings very much. The question is about research. When I was listening to Jenna's tale, I was interested in how she knew what it would be like to put your hands around someone's neck and to choke that person. And then as I was listening to Maggie's story, I was just wondering, I mean, obviously you had been at Woodstock. This was partly a biographical memory, but how much research either one of you had to do in order to help the credibility or the realism of the story?
Well, I can answer because in all honesty, I remembered nothing of Woodstock. Nothing. Zip.
Okay, so you did some research.
I did some research, and some of it was like actually getting in touch with old friends that I hadn't seen in a really long time because I knew they were there, and asking them if they remembered anything. And I kind of pieced my weekend and theirs together to write it.
So I'm obsessed with serial killers. So for years I have been watching, it fascinates me, the psychology behind like psychopaths and sociopaths just has intrigued me all the time. So I have listened to podcasts about crime stories and podcasts about serial killers and documentaries. And I even bought a book for this, like writing, and it's called The New Evil. And it's with like 2 PhD candidates or something, doctors in the field. And it's like a whole like dissertation and like analysis of breaking down different levels of evil and like what constitutes their mind to like hit just what happened, like the different levels of evil that exist. So between like the readings and the podcasts and like, you know, watching movies and just like really learning the facts about it, it just kind of came like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense, Jenna. And thank you, Maggie, for explaining how you used a research technique of personal stories and pieced those fragments together. I also enjoyed how the music wasn't the prominent part of your story, but it was always there in the background. You know, when people kind of came up from a tent or from crashing, who was playing, what music was going on. That was a nice way to interweave the concert in the background. Thank you both.
Thank you.
And Maggie, I've always heard that if you remember Woodstock, you weren't really there. So you can say you don't remember it because you were really there.
Yeah.
Dr. Polly's hand is up.
Hi, thanks to both presenters. I wanted to ask either or both of the two presenters, and if you two want to sort of kick it over to any of your classmates too, this would be a great opportunity. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about a phrase that Professor Terracchio used in his introduction, and that was reading as a writer. I mean, as English majors, you've spent a lot of time reading stuff, and I'm sure you've both done writing too, but in the seminar, you were writing you know, your own novel instead of analyzing somebody else's. And I was just wondering if you could talk some about the, you know, how you go about reading as a writer, or what that meant in practice as part of this seminar for you, and how that then fed into the task of writing something new of your own.
Well, for me, I'm actually a lit concentration. I mean, I'm not in the writing track, although I always wanted to write. I think that, you know, being able to analyze other people's writing is really beneficial when you're writing your own story, because you have that perspective of, if I were just going to read this and analyze it or break it down or even do a close reading on it, you know, what I would get out of it. And that's kind of in the back of your head when you're writing, or at least it was in mine. I don't know how other people in the class felt, but feel free to mention it. How about you, Jenna?
So for me, like through the whole, when I started sitting down and writing, I realized that it felt as if I had never picked up a book in my life. because trying to create a story that doesn't already exist and read like on the page was very difficult, especially since I've never done something like this before. So as I was writing, it didn't feel, it took a long time to really feel like what I was writing was a story. And like when I read books after that, or, you know, I'm also in Dr. Taracchio's contemporary fiction class. And like when I'd be reading those books, I would kind of I would try to envision how the author interpreted the book to be read, and like what he did to make the reader feel a certain thing. So like if I felt a certain way by something someone said, I'm like, how did he do that? Because I need to do that for this book. So it was really more of just like my own want to be the best that I could with writing it, and going back and reading and really like breaking down every small little thing that an author can do that would have an effect on the reader. So
Good answer. Anyone else in the class want to weigh in? No?
I think we maybe have time for one more question if anybody has one. Okay, well, it looks like we don't. So I want to thank both Maggie and Jenna and Dr. Taracchio and all the students in Dr. Taracchio's capstone for their hard work, and a round of applause for everybody, but especially Maggie and Jenna. And thank you all for coming, and for to our virtual English night. It's a first, as there have been so many firsts in this past year. But thanks so much, and I hope I'll get to see many of you in the flesh again someday soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Great job, guys.
Good job,
Have
very
a
good.
good night.
Yeah, it was
Great job,
awesome.
Maggie and Jenna, those were so great. Thank you.
Night.
I got to listen while I was cooking dinner. It was pretty great. It was pretty great. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome.